Welcome in, family. Give folks a few seconds to join that thing real quick. Really excited. We'll give folks a couple seconds just to get in.
Okay, bet. Yeah, I
Yes,
gotta send a
fam.
link to my mama.
I know. We live from YouTube, West to West YouTube, West to West Twitter, and West to West Facebook channels are live right now. So if you are joining us, we appreciate y'all. We brought a really, really very dynamic conversation. Very dynamic brother. I was about to say, a brother I know for a very long time. It feels like it's longer than it actually has been, but
Right.
he's a very dynamic brother, a well respected scholar, well respected researcher, comrade in the struggle, brother Omowale Ashe. We're definitely
Appreciate it.
going to get it cracking. Um, just a quick recap. Last week was our first day of the Bring It Home series. We had Sister Gertrude Jenkins with Making This Matter, which is like an independent education, online education platform for Black and African descendant children. She came and she just kind of gave us insight on what it was like to be a second generation Black educator and the importance of Black intelligentsia pretty much starting in the house and how that impacted her journey. Today we have, like I said, Brother Omowale Ashe will be able to add his insights, share some of his favorite Black intellectuals and scholars, and be able to share the way forward on this conversation of integrity and collective responsibility. How you doing tonight, brother? How you feeling?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm
Sounds
just
great.
I'm out here vibing and just got done with a hike earlier today with
Oh,
some
word.
sisters. Shout out to Susu Society. I got throw that in there. Um,
Absolutely.
Visited the parents, and I'm here. I'm energized.
That's what's up. We so happy to have you. So happy to get into this conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing recently, some of your recent projects, and why you feel like you're equipped to have this conversation?
All right, so I am an educator. I've been teaching for the last, and these years be flying, but it's because 2020 still feel like yesterday. But for the
Man,
last 5 years, um, uh, I don't even like going through credentials.
right. But like, what do you hope to bring to the conversation?
Yeah, so myself and a brother, we started a book club. I've been a part of a few organizations. I'm actually in the process of publishing a children's book and trying to work on some entrepreneurial endeavors because like y'all west to west, like your whole purpose. I'm trying to connect with my fam in West Africa and everything.
Oh,
So
word,
yeah,
word. That's
I
what's
make
up.
sure I can repatriate at some point. So
Absolutely, that's what's up, brother. Hopefully, we be right there with you, not
definitely.
too far from each other. Thank you again for making time. I guess we can just hop right into it and ask, what is your personal definition of African intelligentsia? When we speak of the importance of rebuilding it, can we first like set the conversation with your definition of what African intelligentsia is?
I'd say African intelligentsia is outside the box. Like it's ethereal, it's spiritual, and it's not trapped into what Western concepts of like intelligence is. It's about problem solving, creativity, the
Mhm.
best expressions that we can bring to life in the most abundant ways possible
Right.
to share our gifts to the world. And just like examples, I watch a lot of lectures,
Oh,
and
bet. I know. I already know. We're gonna get into it.
so right, so like one good example is this whole IQ test, and we know that it wasn't really made necessary. It wasn't made for us. It was made for
Mhm.
European Americans and European people, and it's based off of a context surrounded around their reality, their life. What they see and deal with every single day, and that doesn't necessarily show our intelligence, right? One of our best scholars is Baba Amos Wilson, where he has a lecture where he's talking about intelligence and problem solving and how they are related to one another. And he's saying, like, for instance, intelligence isn't necessarily, you know, how well you, like, if you get an A on a test, or how you can memorize information and whatnot. Intelligence should be based off of how you can solve your problems and your people's problems. What good is it that you can make an A on a test knowing when Queen Elizabeth was crowned and such, when you don't know how to fix your water down the street. Those, I'd say, those are like small examples, not even small examples, but just some examples of our. My bad, you muted. Oh, I can't hear you. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Somebody tapped in the comment section. Dang, I hope it's not just me. Like, somebody let me know, please. Because then I can tap out and then come back in real quick. But I guess I'll just continue talking for the time. Okay. I see someone comment and said they can't hear you either. But like, we have. Okay, she's muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, bet. No, so thank you for like setting that as the foundational understanding of what African intelligentsia is, how it
Mhm.
is the antithesis of European ways of thinking,
Right.
how we have to come against all of the different ways of our conditioning to understand who we are and how we should be thinking in this original natural form. Now that we have that, I will ask, what ways do you feel, or can you break down the ways in which African intelligentsia has been attacked or
Mhm.
dismantled very intentionally? I think because we're still building up the morale and the interest and
Uh-huh.
becoming a collective with our own intelligentsia again, we have to then kind of go back and say, okay, y'all, this is what happened. This is why we don't know, so much that we should know. How would you start that conversation for folks who are just entering?
How do I start that? Like, uh, I don't really like to center our story around, this land called America,
Mhm.
Turtle Island. However, for specifically us here, it does, not even just us here, us in general, across the diaspora, on the continent. It really starts with our interactions with other cultures. Um, and like, for instance, Nana Sheikh Dia, or Sheikh Joke, he talks about how we have this two cradle theory, and us, from the warmer climates, Africa, we are more xenophilic versus xenophobic. So it's like we have a love for others versus a fear
Right,
for others.
right,
So with that, when other people come into our environments, we're welcoming. We want to, kind of see, like, what are you about and whatnot. Now, that's not everybody, because obviously we did have some revolts and people fighting and whatnot.
right.
But it really starts a long time ago,
Yeah,
like centuries and centuries. You can literally go to, like, reading Nana Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. You can
right.
have an argument that this started 2500 BC.
Mm,
But just to keep it within the last few years, we're talking about colonization. We're talking about that the Ma'afa, what they traditionally or mainstream calls the Atlantic slave trade, including the Arab slave trade. And just when you're making somebody into an enslaved person, you take their mind.
right.
And those would be the starting points of how we get to all this confusion today,
Mhm.
and parts that block us and whatnot. Because, as coming from that period of time to where we have now is an amazing accomplishment, but we still have so much more to go and so many more blockages.
Mhm.
For instance, today we're talking about like CRT nowadays. Uh, Personally, I don't necessarily see that as the answer, because I don't think
Wait, you
any
have to, for people who
has.
don't know, CRT is critical race theory,
Right.
and it is like a kind of modern definition of being critical of how racism interacts with our life, how it changes how we live, and like the normalization of that lens. But go ahead, because I don't want to
Thank
have
you.
this. This conversation is for folks who may not be having these conversations already. So we gonna try
Okay.
to do
Okay.
defining as we can. But go ahead.
Okay. I appreciate that. So we go from just keep. Okay. colonization in Africa, you going from your name might have been Obafemi, but now you got to change it to Charles. Here, we know that our names are taken, and we sit here and have to learn this American education system and whatnot, or what they want us to know in their curriculum and everything. But this doesn't necessarily center us in who we are. What exactly is our culture? What is our purpose? Why we're here? What is our best way of expressing ourselves?
Right.
And we can't express ourselves best when we're wearing other people's drawers or in their shoes and
Real
trying
talk.
to learn how to talk like them, walk like them, and everything. And it's just not you.
Mhm.
So that's I'd say that would be the starting point right there, is when we start interacting with other cultures, because when we're centered on who we are as African people, that's when we thrive the best. A BB for bro. That's when we thrive the best, statistically speaking, with our own teacher, our own people teaching
Mhm.
our children
Mhm.
and showing that they really love our children.
Yeah.
We do better.
Absolutely.
When we actually learn that and learn by being in nature how we used to be, like as Nana Du Bois would say.
Mhm.
Like, I think he's credited when he says that his best classroom that he ever saw was in Africa, and with all the children circle around a tree with an elder and whatnot. Like,
Right.
that's real education right there.
Right.
It's not sitting in a classroom looking at the board all day long. So there's many blockages to our intelligence, and we're not able to express it here because they want to say we're like talking to a brother last night. I want to say that we're hyperactive,
Mhm. Right.
that we
Can't focus.
exactly can't so it's like we're still defining ourselves by other people's definitions, and
Mhm.
that's what really kind of screws us up from an early stage in our life.
Bet. I thank you for that. I thank you for that. I think it's one way to think of it in the context of folks who are born Africans that are born outside of Africa, right? But it's another thing to think about all of the scholars who are born on the continent, who
Hmm.
are still making strides, whether they're in the academy or just within the community, a greater community of like global diasporic people making strides within like this idea of African intelligence. But when I was doing my study abroad program, one thing that we were confronted with a lot was the idea of brain drain, where a lot of folks go straight to these top Ivy League schools, Black people educated as a buck, you know. But when
Hmm.
it's time to make use of our degree, when it's time to make use of all of our information and this newfound intelligence, we don't bring it back to the community.
Right.
So can you speak a little bit toward like the importance of making sure the educated, the most which Nana Du Bois would have once described as the talented TIFF,
Right.
what are the importance of bringing it home and making sure that we connect the dots between those who understand what it means to be have this African intelligence and those who still may be trying to wear the white man's drawers.
So I'd say the first step is to really understand how to use this academy. As you say, we learn all this stuff, we get the information, but it we have to take a step back and really look at it for what it really is.
Hmm.
When we get degrees in those academies, get these diplomas and whatnot, typically the only place we can take it is, like, for a big example, IBM, Tesla, who just had these lawsuits on racial discrimination and everything.
Hmm.
Microsoft, like, we can only take it to companies that aren't owned by us. I know so many intelligent sisters and brothers, and they want to be in the fight, but the people that are paying them are the
Right.
ones that are, these big corporations that really make their money off of our exploitation, right? As you
Right.
talked about with the brain drains, multiple ways of this exploitation game here. And it's really like a combo. Both sides kind of have to reach to each other, the one that's so-called educated and the one that's not, because uh the first book that we started off with our book club last year was Nana Carter G. Woodson's Miseducation of the Youth.
Never nigga. Yeah.
Right. Like, and many people think they know what that book is about.
Hmm.
And there is some real deep thought that has to go into what he's talking about, because there's one chapter that I really emphasize to my students where he is talking about how, the at that time period, the educated Negro was sitting there not like kind of looking down upon the brother or sister that was having their own had their own like fruit stand or starting their own business and everything. But both sides had like I understand now we're talking about financial literacy, like that's a big thing nowadays.
Mhm.
We're trying to get into this entrepreneurship game, and both sides have to really work together because these are really just businesses that we're really fighting. you know you talk about the blockages. There's this book called Intellectual Warfare by Nana Jacob Carruthers, Jimshu Jahudi, right? And Shimshu Jahudi. And there's a chapter in this book where he is talking about this guy named um, Schlesinger. And this is talking about when he's talking about multiculturalism and like kind of I'm paraphrasing, but like the trap of that term, multicultural. Back then it was kind of thought of like, oh, this is it, like this is what we should be moving toward. But he breaks it down and saying multiculturalism is really just saying we're gonna sprinkle a little blackness in here, sprinkle a little Asian in here, and
Right,
hey, we have a
right.
multicultural education, right? And but he said this Schlesinger guy, he does a I took notes. I had to take some notes
Go
because I
ahead,
knew
go
I
ahead, go
wasn't
ahead,
going to remember
teacher.
this all the way, right? So the Schlesinger guy wrote an essay for this publication called the Larger Agenda Series, right?
Mhm.
And this publication is directed to a non-academic audience. He said that this was in the section of subjects of importance to managers and policymakers in business and the public sector. So here's a whole essay on education, but it's not really directed to the people who are even in education. It's
Right,
directed to the business owners.
right.
And the way that he set it up, his essay, his I think he said the chapter 2 of it was history as a weapon, and he kind of had like kind of how you would see the most wanted, right? How FBI's most wanted and everything, and showing like these are the faces of the people you need to look out for. And he had the likes of like not Dr. Leonard Jeffries in there, right?
Right. Mhm.
One of our highly esteemed elders, right?
Right.
But the way that he predicted them is like, these are people you need to look out for, like him and Naeem Akbar and all that. You need to look out for them because, they're really using this history as a weapon against us. And it's kind of like how they're trying to have this conversation about CRT at the moment, right? And
Mhm.
how history repeats itself and everything, or parallels, rhymes, right? Um, but at that time period, he's marketing to the people who are going to end up controlling how these schools are going to be, or controlling how where the money actually is moving towards. So the way I look at it is, our brothers and sisters that are going into the field of business, entrepreneurship, and everything, and the ones that are in the academy, we have to reach out to one another, make that connection,
Mhm.
so that we can actually work as a team on this because
Right.
um the educators can't do it alone.
Yeah.
you know
No,
I,
I'm.
I oh, my bad.
Oh no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
All right, and I caught the sister Gertrude on hers, and y'all talked about the independent schools and whatnot, and as we know, that can be a struggle, when finances aren't there. It's not like how we were with the Reconstruction era. We should be like that, as our ancestors had it harder than we do
Mhm.
now. Knowing that, I think recently they were talking about how we have 1.6 trillion in spending power, knowing that you can't buy your way to liberation, but
Right.
spending power, right? So but we're not actually using that money to put it towards our children,
Right.
knowing that they're going to reflect our future because they are the future,
Right.
and how society's
And
going to
at the
be.
end of the day, it's one of the hardest things to get, I would say, complete total buy-in of the full Black family is education.
Exactly.
To get everyone to say, look, regardless of how much money it's going to take, how much time it's going to take, we have to improve the quality of education for our children. Not just because they don't want to, but because time, because
Right.
exploitation of our time, and because exploitation of our resources and our wealth, we all have to be like succumb to this system of like capitalism and no rule time for organizing within the home. But what we really want to do, and what I thank you for what you said, was we get back to measuring and understanding our intelligence outside of, the European system, we get to see what our real strengths are. And a
Right.
lot of time that's this very polyrhythmic, very polyexistent type of understanding of who we are. Like we can do multiple things at once. We can come in and out. We can be at the top and at the bottom, alpha and omega, literally at the same time. Because at the end of the day, we are all things and we come from so many different corners of the earth. With that
Mhm.
being said, like how do you one define collective responsibility, but also two tie in collective responsibility to this conversation of like um brain drain, but rebuilding, like we can't just be building by ourselves. You did say that folks within the academy, outside the academy, have to work together, but this idea of responsibility is a little bit different than like obligation. And when you feel
Mhm.
cultural responsibility, you don't just feel like, spiritually obligated. It's like, wow, this is something we call to. How do we call on that more?
That's a man. I saw you ask that question to Sister Gertrude, and I sat there and I was thinking. I still don't think I came up with something just like
Yeah,
I,
yeah, ain't no real one answer type question.
yeah, it's really yeah.
No.
I'd say Ujima, this collective responsibility. I think it's really when we look at our culture, and it's an amazing metaphysical mind trick on how, like, right now, I'm here in Atlanta, and we be saying like Atlanta drives the culture, and everybody wants to talk about culture. You got Migos saying culture. It's crazy how we have such an emphasis on culture, but don't realize, or even think like, what is our culture? What
Yeah.
is a culture? What is the purpose of a culture?
Right.
And it's like when we have culture, a proper culture that is beneficial to us, it gives us a sense of direction. It does give us that purpose. It does give us those goals and whatnot. We will get to the Ujima collective responsibility process because we would actually understand what exactly we should be doing.
Right.
Um, I think that's what's lacking the most. I mean, I don't think most people realize how important culture really is.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Mama Marimba has this quote that many people use, but it's hard to beat it. Like culture is our immune system.
Mm-hmm.
It's our immune system. It is our weapon. It's everything that really helps us thrive. It's our energy. You know, and without that, when somebody else or some other entity or some other group, another people are the facilitators of your culture, you're really working in the benefit of them. And I don't think you really can work on collective responsibility because, you know, working on somebody else's time, space, culture, everything, you're now in chaos. You're no
Right.
longer in your center of gravity anymore. I think that's the main thing I'd
Right,
say.
about to say, and I think that'd be a good first step to understanding collective responsibility is understanding who your collective is. We
Right.
really have been so conditioned to just overextend ourselves to everyone, our allies. We want allies. We want to come against the oppressor. We want to go
Well,
do everything. We want to just do
yeah,
everything on everybody's time. It's like, can we get back? Can we get back? We
right,
are here for something very specific. And it's
right.
not to be everyone's teammate. It's not to be everyone's pal. I think we kind of got out of especially Black History Month. It'd be so funny. I'm watching all these ways that Black culture is commodified and watching Black people feel like they can easily just give pieces of their
Information.
value or
Yeah,
whatever it is just because it's Black History Month made available to non-Black or non-African people just because it's Black History Month
right,
and they're doing it for the sake of Black History Month. I'd be so
right.
cringy. And I wanted to have a real conversation about like what does this month really mean, if anything. We hear
Yes.
some of our comrades reclaim Black History Month as African Liberation Month. We hear them reclaiming this Black Futures Month, knowing that we can't. Oh, we got some new comments. Knowing that, oh, okay, no, knowing that we um knowing that we can't just give up our, I feel like our gems. So I think African Intelligentsia, I think of like all of the movies that we seen as children, that culture was seen and portrayed as something positive. It was almost like so many secrets. I'm thinking about like the old Asian warrior movies where half of the handshakes you
Mm,
couldn't even know just off the GP of you not from here and you don't rock with us
right,
and you can't know our shit. So it's
Right.
like, at what point do we get that same type of pride and we want to retract during this month? We want to go into deep hibernation. We want to just want to come together and say, yo, if we have to get all our stuff straight for a month. So for our history month, we'll be able to come out and say we're changing history. Like,
Hmm.
what would it look like to have that power be kind of redirected? And I think that's where my mind is with this idea of collective responsibility. Is it's hard for us to feel responsible for each other when we're responsible for everybody else. We have
Right.
to literally deal with the feelings of our oppressors. We're going through the system for, God forbid, like I send prayers of grace and mercy on everyone who's still working, within the system and really has a heart to get out, but has to be there for the idea of means and making a living. I feel like all of us owe it to each other to just know and be able to readily identify our immediate goals, our immediate obligations to each other, and our immediate resources, because it'd be so hard to move within and out the system knowing like who really got my back, regardless of whether or not you're educated or not. As an educator, some of the families we work with, the mothers and the caretakers, the guardians of our students, are not educated, and we talk about some of
Hmm.
these larger systemic challenges we're trying to debunk within our classroom, and some of our families don't have the wherewithal, honestly, to understand what's going on enough to combat
Right.
it. So how do we then, as educators, with this understanding, with this power, begin to become responsible for that little bit of a gap that's now been created by the lack of access to information? So I thank you for that. Moving forward, integrity. I think a lot of times when we're getting into spaces, especially Black spaces, African, Pan-African spaces, we have to be very honest about how they've been infiltrated, how
Yeah.
they have been compromised and devalued just based on how folks have come in and out so violently with the information that we have to give and the culture that we claim to be our own. So how do you begin to be just a bit more, I would say, trained and recognizing and honoring integrity within the African Black community? And what does that look like in these new days and time? It's so many scams going on, not just
Right.
financial scams, but cultural scams. People are getting scammed out of their own wisdom, their own information. There's a lot of people coming out claiming to be Pan-African scholars, and they're deterring people. We got Tariq Nasheed and the FBA Army coming
Right.
to take us all out. So we definitely need to just,
Charlatans.
how do you go back to refining the integrity that we move within our people and just organizing? I know you represent so many different people, so you know a little bit about this.
Yeah. It really all starts with character.
Hmm.
You know, that's one of those things that I don't think we put enough emphasis on as well, because I don't recall, because I watch so much now. I don't recall if Sister Gertrude said this, or if it was something else lately. But it's like in these schools, today. Oh, I'm sorry. Shout out to the Ero Foundation. Um,
Hey.
they had a whole seminar series this earlier today that was about like basically enhance like how
Oh,
us as
word! I seen you posted how to like sit down, strategize, Black minds, Black children, Black
yeah.
families.
Yeah, man, that was beautiful, right?
Word.
But okay, so in there you're talking about how in our typical environment we don't put emphasis on character, where you're not necessarily trying to learn like manners or how to approach nature, like how do you treat it, how do you see the reciprocity in your life and what you're giving out to the world and whatnot. And um I mentioned reciprocity just because you say like we're giving out a lot of information.
Yeah.
A lot of people are basically prostituting information or prostituting ourselves, and without even realizing it. And it's I'm gonna be honest with you. I felt
Look, and honestly, for the record, also too, I know it's our first time being on live. We went straight
yeah.
to the live. We don't do too much of code switching or filtering. Please feel free to just be raw and be yourself and speak as it comes to your mind. Represent, but also just speak it, brother. You could just be as real as you want to be.
Okay. So I think anytime it has so much to do with money, you're not really working within your right mind. I don't feel like that at all. Like if, for instance, like you mentioned Tariq Nasheed, his whole thing is pimping our community. He's a Black Power pimp.
Mhm.
Then we also another sister. I remember she said hotel hustlers. You know, we got all these people out here with this, and there was a brother recently where he is talking about how he went to some seminar, and one quote that stood out from him was "Follow information, not people." And it's like I can see a balance in that because, for instance, you have the likes of Nana Omowale, Malcolm X, you know, and he I depend. I don't really. I know how the subjects with his life and certain organizations can be very touchy for people,
Hmm.
but the facts are out there, and the brother did not just. At first, he might have been following a person, but he was always someone who was searching for truth. You know, he was someone who had character. And when he found that truth and started removing himself, you know, that's probably when I'm talking about balance, that's probably a brother I'd follow.
Yeah.
You know, because he was an upright brother. Like um people that are who else is there? You know, Tariq Nasheed, you
Um,
got young, like for instance, young Pharaoh, who went totally the opposite direction of all of his rhetoric.
and it's a lot of people. I don't want to say everybody. I would say there's a lot of folks out here right now, whether they're claiming to be Pan African, they're like influencers within the Black community. They all got their own agenda. They all got their own politics. They all got their own access to Black, what we see as what we're coining as Black excellence and financial freedom and all these different
Right,
things because they're putting on this facade and the presentation of such. But the truth is that if just acquiring wealth was enough for us to be truly indeed liberated, then we would be liberated. And
exactly.
that's only to say there's so many Black financial people doing financial shit all around the world. And if we talk about Black wealth and African wealth, like there has never been um, a real shortage for me. And poverty is different. We have
Right,
a abundance of poverty, but there's also an abundance of Black wealth in places that we would never even see because they're so far away from us. So I think we need to focus on, not to take away from your point, I agree 100%. But I think these influencers, they have so much of our time and attention because of how exploited we are financially and how
yeah,
poverty has plagued us that we get so excited when we see Black people with money. We just make them these leaders and we throw
right,
everything into them. We don't have, and we don't have this skill, going back to CRT, of just like critiquing folks well enough and being so observant, so observatory long enough to know what's really going on. um who was it? Jay Morrison, the Tulsa real estate fund guy.
yeah,
He was a really dope leader. Like he had so much information. Black people, it was like making him like the new age leader. We all about to give our money to this man. Black people can ever, we give
right,
money to this man because that's what we needed to be liberated from. What we thinking we are just financially so fat set back. But at the end of the day, I don't think nobody seen the purchase of no properties.
right.
And when it came down to getting the return on the investment, we felt like, dang, we wanted to support a brother. We wanted to support Black initiatives. We want to get behind things that are supposed to be good for Black people. But we do have to be cognizant and aware and critical of like these Black power pimps. And I think that goes
Mhm.
back to just having a sense of intelligence. When you really do have your own intelligence, you're able to read things from afar and up close. Like, okay, that's what's up. At that, and I ain't gonna lie, he didn't get none of my money. And I was very interested in it. And I
Yeah,
just wanted to watch it. I just wanted to see what happened. And to this day we can see like not much has taken, not much has transpired. But with that being said, we do have to raise our awareness when it comes to these Black power pimps, and also this idea of collective responsibility, because we are all collectively responsible for each other. When we
right.
see things, how we call things out, how we make amends, how we go the extra mile to extend and maybe rebridge gaps within the access to information, because there's so much to be said. There's so much that we have to learn. At the same time, we are dealing with so much. So this idea of like being a Black educator in a world where you have to be just alive, and then have enough interest and care, community in your heart to want to go and extend that information. So again, we thank you for all that you contributed tonight, but also for being a teacher and really being an educator first and foremost, and bringing that information back.
Likewise to you.
Oh, you already know. You already know. I recently stopped working in traditional schools because West to West will have its own school very soon. But
Okay.
we have to like be more adamant about bringing it home. So
Right.
with that being said, I will ask, who are your top five Black African scholars, and
Mm.
some of the messages that you taken into five might be a small number for a brother like yourself, but I do
Yeah.
need you to come with it,
Let me get like 15.
right?
5. No, I ain't gonna lie, bro. I pulled out my ancestors
Well,
list
come
and
on. Well, just go
and
ahead and run them
my
down.
elders.
Run
All
them.
right, yeah. I can't because again, as African people, we are collective. You
Yeah.
know, it can't 5 ain't enough. Even this
Well,
ain't
give us
enough.
the top five and then go from the top of your memory.
Top 5: Mama Marimba, Baba Amos Wilson,
Ashe.
Nana Bobby E. Wright, Nana Sheikh Anta Diop or Joke,
Ashe.
and Nana John Henry Clark. That would be
Okay.
right now our top 5. But nah, let me get these names in here,
That's
please.
what's up. Go ahead. Go ahead. And then
Like,
for
so
folks
we,
in the comments, we got 3 folks on Facebook, but we have like 30 people on and 40 people on Twitter. So I want to be able to keep these names.
yeah, if you don't have any of these works, please get them. Like, and the thing is, with our scholarship, sometimes these books start to not be printed anymore. They go out of print. So for someone like myself, I love books.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes there's rare books like 200, 250, $300 and stuff like that. And it's like if you don't, some of these people, we do have contemporaries, but some people you might need to get these before you can't get them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if I is it cool if I
Yes, please go
all
into.
right, so I'm gonna just list them out, and some are gonna be repeats what I just said. But Nana Bobby E. Wright, Nana Marcus Garvey, Nana Amos Wilson, Mama Marimba Ani, Nana John Henrik Clark, Nana Yosef Ben Yakinen, Baba Baruti, Baba Mwalamu Baruti, Nana Carlos Cooks. Now that's gonna be a rare book for you to find if you can. Nana Omowale Malcolm X's the autobiography. You can't go wrong there. But so many extensive works written
Yeah.
about him.
Me too.
Nana Kuntu Dale Jones. He's got works on Culture Bandits, the Black Holocaust. Nana Francis Cress Welsing. Nana Ishaka Musa Barashango. Nana Steve Coakley. Nana Kobe KK Cambone. Nana Bafor Asa Hilliard. Nana Patricia Newton. Nana Layla Africa, Nana Anderson Thompson, Tata Fukiao, who wrote The African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo,
Yeah.
Self-Healing Power and Therapy, Nana Jacob Carruthers, Baba Chinwezu, and Nana Chancellor Williams. Those would be like my top ones right now. Now
Period.
we got like Nana Martin Delaney and Henry Hubert Harrison. We can go on, but like this is if y'all can get these people's works and possibly just started Nana Carter G. Woodson's Miseducation. If you ain't
Yeah.
ever touched that book,
Yeah.
there's so many gems in that. It was dropped in 1933, and we still in 1933.
Real talk.
Um, so yeah,
Thank you for that list. I would love if you could text me those names, and I would just include that like in the description of your talk.
right.
Like these are the books that Brother Omowale would suggest. That'd be a nice bit of follow up with the talk. But no, a lot of those folks, it is so crazy talking about this idea of the academy and access to information. A lot of these authors that you mentioned, we had been reading from, or at least been hearing old folks talk about, and just like the Black Cultural Center in Sacramento, where I'm from. So like the first time we read the ISIS papers or excerpt from the ISIS papers was when we was like in eighth grade. And she was
Mm,
just passing stuff around like, you know what this means? And we really didn't know, but we coming back to it. And it's such a full circle moment. I give so much thanks, honor, and praise to like community mothers who was always around, this black baby just around, like, you ever heard of the spook that sat by the door? Or have you ever heard
Yeah.
of the Negro's greatest enemy? Like, you know what this is? And going in and out of these different conversations, because that's who we are as a people. Even
Right.
having books and access to literature as a resource is so nice, but we are a folks of oral tradition. So coming out of this requirement to be so tucked away in our studies, but no, get into a book club, go talk about it, go learn about it, talk about it so much to the point where you can regurgitate it just off your tongue. You know, it's such a pleasure to talk about, to talk with you about it, because I can see like your passion just igniting it, and how you talk about everything concerning African intelligence. So there's such a, like, again, a pleasure to have you here with us, brother. And I think for the really, now I wouldn't say the end of the conversation, but what we're really trying to drive home is the importance and the urgency of study as it pertains to our
Right.
well-being and our liberation. If there is, oh yes, sir.
I just want to get one last thing,
Oh,
that studying part. We are not studying just to be know-it-alls. Like as you mentioned earlier, it's a lot of information being put out there, but information without direction is just chaos. You have to, all of those people that I just named, all of the works they put out there, it was not for them to stroke their ego. Their work was in the theories that they had, the studies and everything they did was to be applied.
right,
And as I said, many of them are ancestors now. It's there's everything has been said. It's really on us to just do.
right.
you know so that's on that integrity piece. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry,
Go ahead.
but if I was just talking to my brother earlier, if I can't see Nana Omowale, Malcolm X doing it, then I kind of turn my head,
Yeah,
or like if I can't see my ancestors doing it, what that's what you should be asking. What would I know they say like WWJD, but no, what would my ancestors do?
right,
That's what
right.
really needs to be asked, because that really helps me stay on that straight and narrow path to the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And being knowledgeable of the ancestors, you know, being knowledgeable of enough ancestors to make a collective decision. Like, no, okay, I might have to go in with my Garvey on this, but I gotta know when to engage with my Dubois, because I know I gotta know, because I can't just, you know, be out here with only limited resources. And that's what I kind of see my studies as, is unlimited resources. Anything that I want to know I can go and access through a book, or just conversation with intelligent as people. But there's so much information to be got, and we have to get it. So what I was saying was, can you, in our final words, can you connect the urgency of study, and you started on it, but the urgency of study with the relationship to our liberation, and how, going back to the very early iterations of law where we weren't even allowed to read or write, how do you connect and kind of empower this idea of African intelligentsia with the urgency of study?
Well, first, I like to apologize for even interrupting you there, since
Oh
I was
no, you good,
right
you
into the
good.
same thing. But I would say, okay, repeat that last part for me, 'cause I really wanted to apologize.
Oh no, you're good. I said,
Urgency of study.
how would you connect the urgency of study toward the
Our liberation,
to
right?
our liberation, as we are like actively rebuilding this idea of African intelligentsia? Like, how do you marry those two in conversation?
Okay, so just going to our ancestors here in the States. As like I mentioned Reconstruction earlier, but within like 2 years of the Civil War, even before then, we knew, since there's that old saying, you want to hide something from a Negro, put it in a book.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of us already understood, this is something that's going to help us to get to our liberation, actually studying. We understand it's not just going to be from our hands, but our minds, our soul, and so on. Right.
Mhm.
But within 2 years, we were already starting our own schools, and understanding that was really going to help us not be exploited. We're talking about this exploitation. You try to talk to somebody about imperialism today, they might not even know what that really is, because they got some basic generic definition of what it was in high school, and then all they had to do is select B, and they got the right answer and moved
Right, right.
on. So you can you can get tricked in so many different ways if you're not well studied to
Mhm.
be able to have the vision on what exactly is this. Like you mentioned the J Morrison right now. I'm watching NFTs because I don't want to get tricked in this game. I don't know how it's gonna move, but certain things can, when those high percentage people have a majority of the stock in whatever it is, they control that. So study, going back all the way to Kemet, what they had above the temples, know thyself. It that is always going to lead to our liberation. you know
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you you can't. Yeah, I don't. Sometimes people tell me they don't read,
Mm.
and it hurts my soul because it's a world that you don't even know of that exists until you read. You know, uh, the Matrix gets mentioned a lot, and I feel like it, and it's always talked about the he said she said on who really created it.
Yeah.
I really do feel like that is an example of our situation.
Right.
We're never really going to fully understand the layers and layers and layers of the matrix until you actually study, what exactly you're dealing with. Who really am I? Am I the one, we really are the one, the beginning and the end,
Right.
like you
Right.
said. And it's, you don't know that until you start studying, and especially here in the States when they try to tell you your story starts with slavery, so then you don't even care about your own life.
Right.
you know um that is so pivotal because just in my personal experience, I'll say, or 2022, so 4 years ago you could catch me partying anytime. 2019, picked up the book, changed my entire life. Even how we mentioned with this financial aspect, like when I started actually learning finances, and even one book even predicted a crash in 2020. It didn't necessarily say it was going to be because of COVID or anything like, but it said based off of these estimates and how the stock market always crashes within such and such amount of years. They're like, well, we estimate it'll be like 2020.
Wow.
I'm reading this during the situation or when it's about to occur, didn't click. And I'm like, ain't no way. Then it happens. And I'm like, bruh. Like, and only if I studied more in that area to know what exactly was gonna happen, you know, uh, who knows? And that's a lot of our situations. Who knows? Only if, and all we had to do was use our ancestors and step and walk on their shoulders, that they built for us, and move forward with that intelligentsia to know what we should be doing in certain time periods. Because like I said, history rhymes. I think that was a quote from one of them white authors. But it's always up and down. It's a rhythm, and us as African people, we know,
Rhythmics for sure.
yes, we know rhythm. So it's like if once you start realizing there's a rhythm in literally every single thing, whether we're talking about uh racism, and like 2020 was almost on a timeline too. It came 5 years from 2015. That was right after 2012. So we got Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, and so
Right.
forth. It's
Right.
it's on these rhythms. And like, so we already know election season comes around. What's gonna happen? They're gonna start blowing up race. you know, like that's a rhythm. Certain rhythms, once you realize what it is, then you can become that so-called alchemist
Right.
to not necessarily control your environment, but to flow with the environment, to know when you should, take that jab, or when you should duck, when you should actually go for the haymaker. That it's a rhythm to it all. It's a dance, and we show that with our bodies, but it's really time to show it up here as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely, in our mind. And then I just gotta add, 'cause, if we're gonna do it in our bodies and our mind, we also have to do it in our spirit. Just
Exactly.
knowing the temperature of our people, feeling where we're at, like knowing the pace of our people. Are we good for real? Are we vibrationally in alignment with each other enough to be able to feel each other and know what it's gonna take to move forward together? One thing I will say before we close is one of the most powerful ideas I learned in school was the idea of community self determination.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I had never heard it or internalized it, because it was because I had the words to articulate the
Mhm.
mandate I felt like was so deeply rooted in who we just are as a people. But this idea of self determination can only be achieved when you really truly know down to the basic unit of the Black community is ourselves. We are the greatest, our greatest resource. So we're measuring resources and talking about resource allocation. We have to know like who the first and best resource is, and that's ourselves. So when I
Right.
came into the idea of community self-determination, it was so enlightening for me because I finally had a word to describe the way forward and the plan.
Mhm.
It wasn't just for myself, but I was me knowing and being able to align myself with the greater mission was going to help all of us. And so when I think of rebuilding African intelligentsia and the urgency of study, I'm thinking of community self-determination. How for us to really, really, really be considered the best resource for our people, there has to be something that we're bringing to the table past just, a wonderful, wonderful good time and like us being able to come
Mhm.
together and have amazing ass celebratory events. We have to be able to say that we are refined by our unification. That when we come together, things get better for us. When we come
Right.
together, we're able to improve our condition and improve our understanding. So when I think of collective community self-determination and collective responsibility, I'm thinking of myself as a
Mhm.
basic unit of like metric. If we had to measure the units in the Black community, like I am the basic unit, and I have to come and able to make a difference with that. So I would just encourage us all when we talk about rebuilding African intelligentsia, it starts with yourself. When we're bringing it home, you can bring it to your household. You can bring it home within yourself. Where do you find your strength? Where do you find the most immediate source of your intelligence? And I will hope that it's not anywhere outside of yourself, your people, or our culture, because we have so much to offer. At this time, I will ask if you have any closing words or remarks, anything you wanted to leave the people with. We thank you again for coming. Do your thing. All that.
Closing remarks, man. I would just say, just to piggyback off of what you say, like really know thyself. Really take that time, like, because I ain't gonna say the other one, but Kemet wasn't built in a day. I'll say that. Kemet was not built in a day. Timbuktu was not built in a day, you know. And I know how we're so attached to this land here, but America wasn't. Yo, you already know I got to throw that in there. The none of this stuff is built in a day. Pace yourself. Find out what really works for you. Because we're talking about 400, at least in the States, but even just in general, 400 years to 2,000 years that we're dealing with with our story and relating that to the body, and you let's say you were 400 pounds, you're not going to be 150 tomorrow. You can't have that cheat day 7 days into you working out and trying to get your life right.
Right.
So same thing is just know thyself, take your time, stay disciplined, and understand, as you said, you're doing this as for yourself, but also as a unit of this collective. You're one of the stones in the pyramid. That
Yeah.
pyramid ain't whole without you. So that's probably what I'd say. And like my bro Kwame said, Africa, in the words of Nana Kwame Ture, Africans, bro. Like keep your mind on Africa and you'll be straight.
Straight up. Thank you so much, Brother Omowale Ashe. Is it unlocked or unblocked?
Oh, unlocked. Yeah,
Unlocked. Okay.
unlocked the book club, unlocked the black curriculum. We're taking a little hiatus just to recenter ourselves and focus. We don't want to be a book club anymore. Book clubs don't really go anywhere. It's more so with some focus and intention, and that's how we should be as a cultural unit.
Yeah, period. We can't wait till y'all come out. However y'all come out, we know y'all foot to the ground. We know y'all soldiers. We believe in y'all. Y'all now have our full support. Any way that we could be a part of the relaunch, the revamp, let us know. We really, really, really appreciate. I
Thank you.
remember watching y'all lives. We was watching your lives with our students, and
Real?
yeah,
No,
like
y'all didn't. We was cussing in there.
I mean, hey, honestly, my kids they appreciate that though because our African intelligence tells us that sometimes vulgarity there's no way to who said it. I'm gonna quote her. It was one of the sisters from the Move organization in Philadelphia. I forgot her name, but when they're in the documentary, she came out and said there's no other words to describe profane situations but other than profanity. So don't be mad when we use the language we use as our people because we are describing our conditions and our conditioning. But
Okay.
all that to say, we don't really filter our speech in front of our students. But that's what's up, and we thank you, and we just thank y'all for doing our Dougie. However it comes out, we all know we're on the same side of liberation, and that's all that matters.
Of course.
Yeah. So have a good one,
All right.
everybody. Thank y'all for tuning in. This has been the Bring Your Home series with Omowale, Ashe, and Kari J from West to West. Have a good evening.
Peace.